thank you so much for agreeing to get interviewed, Katrina. And yeah, like I said, just going over sort of general things first. So yeah, where did you grow up?
So I am third in 5 generations of Westsiders, so I grew up here on the West Side.
Awesome. Yeah. So 5 generations Westsiders. Mm-hmm. So that means your great-grandparents came here?
Yeah, well, my grandparents.
Okay, your grandparents,
yes. Then my parents, and then and then my generation, and then I raised my kids here, and then my grandkids.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what area of the West Side did you grow up in?
Right down on, it used to be called Concord Street. It's Cesar Chavez now. It's right before 52, right before Our Lady of Guadalupe on Cesar Chavez.
Okay. Yeah, do you have any memories of growing up here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the memories of the neighborhood were like all of us kids knew each other. We went to school together. We played sports together. The community, like you would know if you saw somebody, that's so-and-so's auntie or so-and-so's grandpa, you know. So the community was pretty close. It was beautiful to be able to be surrounded by other cultural things, like you can walk around the neighborhood and smell the smells and see the different vibrant colors and the art, and be able to go to the corner store and pick up ingredients, you know, for recipes, cultural recipes. So yeah.
Yeah, like what were some of the smells you remember?
I remember my family had a booth at Cinco de Mayo every year. It was very different back then growing up. There's a blanket too if you get cold.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
And pillows behind you. But yeah, so growing up, we had a booth, and my mom would sell beans and rice and tamales and tacos, deep fried tacos. And so the Cinco de Mayo celebration was the biggest one, but it was really run by the community. And so it was cool to see your neighbor who's selling their jewelry that they make, or your friend's grandma who's, you know, selling the food she makes. And it was a very different type of celebration. So it brings me back to the smells of, like, roasted corn in the summertime. Or when there's danzantes, there's the smell of, like the Palo Santo smell, I guess. And then you could hear the sounds of, like, Mexican or Spanish music playing, and then the vibrant colors on all the buildings, and yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. So, the Cinco de Mayo festival, is that held on Cesar Chavez? That's the street that it's held on. Has it always been held on that street?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, it's always been held on that street, but it used to start at Our Lady of Guadalupe, and then it would kind of come down to, like, where Holiday is now. And it was kind of sectioned off, where it was more like artists and makers, down the main street, and then like right where El Burrito and stuff is right now would be more like small business owners, artsy stuff, and then there was never any corporations, like Wells Fargo was never there. There's none of that, but then it was a 3-day event. There were lowrider car show one night, like outside grilling and stuff would happen, just because it was just like this 3-day huge event. The parade was on Saturday, and people would have garage sales all around the neighborhood. It was a big deal.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That sounds fun. So I imagine that was something that you all, like, really looked forward to as a family.
Yeah.
Were you really close with your family?
Yeah, so I was raised by my paternal grandparents, and so we were very close growing up. We were really connected in the community, really, my mom worked at El Burrito, and it was a mom and pop shop. Kind of, she worked there, and she was undocumented until until Clinton was in office. So she really wanted to give back to community, and so what she did was, she was known as the lady in the blue house, La Señora la Casa Azul, and so people would knock on our door all the time randomly. We always kept a coat closet in the front with all different sizes of coats, because when you tell people from the south that it's cold in the north, it's not like hoodie cold, it's like parka cold. So she always kept coats, and she would have people come, they would knock on the door because they heard word of mouth, and she would pray for them, she would feed them, she'd give them coats, and then she'd send them to El Burrito to get food on her account. And oftentimes she did that so much that she didn't get a check. But so that was her way of community tithing. That's what she called it. And then later on, down the road a little bit, my dad, so these are my paternal grandparents that I'm referring to as mom and dad. So my dad then, he knew what it was like to have to start over again, over and over and over in his life. And so he built a shed, and my mom would still be La Señora en la Casa Azul, but this was like the houseless community. And lots of times they would get deported or put in detox. And so my dad built the shed for their belongings. So if they went to detox, they could come back out and get their stuff. Or if they were deported and could somehow find a way to get to us, her number was the same her whole life. So they would call on a house phone, and if they could. Otherwise, so that's what they did. And my mom would restore dignity in our houseless community, because she would give them jobs like rake the leaves, or the snow, or trash removal, or whatever it was. And so they would come, she would pray for them, and then she would feed them and give them some bucks, and they would do this chores for her. Yeah.
That's really cool. Where do you think she got that idea of like community tithing? Like, where did she get those values from?
So my mom was from Mexico, and they grew up really, really poor. Like when we went to go see where they lived, like the ground was dirt. There were sheets on ropes to kind of make dividers. There's a hole in the ground to go to the bathroom, things like that. And so for her journey, to come here and then work the fields, and then find my dad, who she ultimately, she was traveling with her brother and working fields all around the United States, and then she landed in Colorado in a small border town called Julesburg. And so she didn't know any English, and my dad didn't know any Spanish, but they had this instant attraction. And so they had one date in the town cemetery, and then the second date they decided they were going to get married. And so they had to drive and travel across states and lie about their age and all of that to get married. And I don't know how they navigated life in that way. One not knowing Spanish, one not knowing English. So I think my dad knew a little bit of Spanish. He's full Mexican too, but he was born an American citizen. And so anyways, they grew up very poor. And so to my mom, it felt like to be able to own that house on Cesar Chavez, to be a homeowner, and then it was, it's a very modest home, but from where she came from, and even where she raised her kids in the small shack on the farm, while my dad was doing farm work and she was raising the kids, they were just very poor. And so when she got here and was able to buy a home, be the only people to live in that home ever, it was just dirt, and they, built it, and they didn't build it with their own hands, they hired people to build it, but it was a big deal to her. And so she just really felt deeply that she needed to somehow help people but stay under the radar because she's undocumented, and that was the way for her to do that.
Yeah, how do you feel, like, observing that impacted you growing up?
Yeah, so I don't know. I know she had a deep faith because we were in church 5 days a week. Not Our Lady. We weren't Catholic, which was strange for a Latino family. You know, it was just typical that we would be Catholic, but we were not. We were Assembly of God. And so we went to church 5 days a week, whether it was like Bible study or to clean the church or a youth group or whatever it was. She was very involved. And the reason for her, when I asked her, was that her mom died when she was 5. And so she didn't, and then she had sisters, but they got split up when the mom died. And then my mom came to the United States. Actually, that's also an interesting story. She was only 5 or 6 years old when her mom passed away. And immediately after that, her brother, who was older in his 20s, who she hadn't met, got wind, and that they needed to split the kids up. There was a couple of younger ones, and so he was on the other side of the border in El Paso, Texas, with his engine running and the trunk open, and my mom and her sister devised a plan where her sister would distract, like, Border Patrol, and my mom just pretended to be, like, getting fruits from the people on the strip, that were selling, the local vendors. And then she just, like, booked it across the border, across the bridge, across the border, jumps into her brother's trunk. And I just always think about, like, how brave you had to be to do that. You just had no idea. You're leaving the life you've ever known, running to somebody you don't even know. So there's that. But it just kind of tells you a sense of, like, her resilience and her, like, fire to seek a good life for herself, even at that age. So she's traveling around. She's going to these different places, doing the farming work. And I think what happened for her was that the churches where she found mothers that would mother her.
And how old was she again at this time?
5 or 6.
5 or 6. Okay.
Yeah, and so between 5 or 6 all the way until, like, 15, 16, I would say, because I think she got married when she was 16. So all that was, kind of just going around. But she said she never had home. And so the one common denominator was whatever church she went to, she would find women who would love on her, teach her how to cook, show her how to make tamales, or, just nurture her in ways that she was hungry for without her sisters and without her mom. And so I think that's where that came from, was just feeling like her faith was really, really strong. And so that's why she kept going to church and seeking that out. And then I think it just became a natural way for her. I was young, so I remember all the knocks at the door, and I remember the coat closet. But I also never got to ask her why that started, So, and then for me, mine became kind of advocacy, support. It's, I've worked in, like, working with houseless folks, working with women and kids in transitional housing, working with young Latino kids about sexual health and treatment centers, prisons, things like that. And so I think that because she planted that seed, I knew how to, like, put my own flavor on it. And then my kids did too. So it's kind of been, like, going generation after generation.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you, like, did some sort of, like, community project or, stepped into the community?
I think even as a young person, it was this natural space. And so I remember being in high school and being part of what was called Teens Networking Together. And so one of the things I remember was, like, we provided sober cab. which was at that time was unheard of. And so it was like on New Year's Eve, because we knew it was a big party time, to prevent any drinking and driving or accidents. We just set up shop. There was a hotline number you called, and then people, adults in our lives, used their own cars, and the teens kind of went with. And so I remember doing sober cab. I also remember doing, at that time, it would have been the early 90s, and so we were doing AIDS awareness again. It wasn't like really well known, and at that time people were still dying. It was like a death sentence. And so we did a lot of work with folks who were, struggling with, not struggling, living with AIDS. And, so we did a lot of different things.
Yeah.
That was back in high school. Before that, I don't even have much memory.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So you went to high school around here then?
I went to Humboldt and I went to Gap. I ended up graduating from Gap because it was walking distance from my house, and it started at 9:30 in the morning, where Humboldt started at 7. So that's why I did the transfer, because if I had the option, I'm like, nope.
Yeah, I feel like that's a lot more common now, the later start time. Because it's better for the developing brain. But yeah, back then that was probably like, why wouldn't I?
Yep. So yeah.
Yeah. Did you enjoy high school?
Yep. I really loved high school. It was one of my favorite memories of time. I met my very close friends there. We remained friends still to this day. Sorry. I don't know who it is even. It looks like a... I forgot what they're called. But yeah, telemarketer, because it's an 800 number. Stop it. Yeah, so where were we? Did I like high school? I loved high school. I made a lot of friends there. We were taught by brothers and sisters, so like nuns and brothers. And then there was a sprinkle of non-clergy folks, but Sister G, she's like pretty well known on the west side. There's a mural on the side of El Bruto with a picture of her on it, and community folks are really familiar with her. But she saw a need in the community for young people were struggling and they would just drop out. And so what she did was start having a school with brothers and sisters in a house, and just start having these kids. She didn't want them to feel just given up on, and so she started just kind of collecting young people and having, so some of them had children, that was a barrier. Some of them had like some addiction, or maybe a parent was in jail or whatever it was. And so she was really known for knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, Lucid, why aren't you in school today?" And then she'll wait for you while you get it ready, and then she'll bring you to school. She was that kind of person. And she did, she marched with Martin Luther King and with Cesar Chavez, and there's like PBS episodes about her. And anyways, so she started this school. And when I got there, she was, she had a vision for like the stand that's there now, that addition that's there now. It's like the gray building on the corner. Okay. Behind Our Lady of Guadalupe. Okay. There's Gap. So there used to be a house, and then this bigger new addition to it. And now I think they knocked the house down. And it's just regular school now. But I mean, for the same types of folks, for folks who like learn differently or have different needs or whatever. But so school was really... It was really an awesome time for me. I met a lot of friends, and there was a lot of opportunity to tap into different things that you wouldn't get at mainstream school, like be introduced to meditation, or beading, or I don't know, whatever, you name it, that they were able to be like multidisciplinary teachers in that they could bring their full selves and share with you whatever practices they have as well. So while you're learning science, you're also first meditating, or,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I wish I had that.
Yeah. So, and then, there's like weightlifting class, but there's no gym. So we'd have to like go over the catwalk and then go over to neighborhood house to play basketball. So there was some things that there's no sports team, there's no homecoming. There's some things that you didn't get, but there were other things that you did that were, fulfilling for me and the other students at my school too. Even created a small family, I think only 12 to 15 people in a graduating class. And so that made it seem like the teachers really knew you and they really wanted to see you succeed and would work with your family to make sure like there's any barriers we could help, make sure they're getting to school. I got pregnant in my senior year, and so they worked really hard with me so I could graduate before I had her. So I graduated 6 months early, and then I joined the graduation ceremony, and then a week later I had her. So
wow.
Yeah.
That was a fun time.
yeah, good times.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah, I bet that's kind of nice having a sort of closer relationship with the teachers. Was the makeup of the school like mostly Mexican, or do you remember kind of the demographic?
Yeah, so it was really black and brown people. There were a few folks who were Asian or indigenous, and then there were sprinkles of white folks. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some white sprinkles.
Yeah, and so what was cool though was that you didn't see really the cliques that you would see in high school, because I don't know, it might be a combination of the teachers working to like build a community, but also people had real struggles. I was fortunate at that time that I was like privileged enough to decide that I want to go to this school. Other folks were maybe kicked out of other schools, and so this is their last chance, or and most people bust in, or I remember there's one girl who came from Monticello, which is pretty far, to come every day. But yeah, and so they must have really found something there that worked for them to take the bus every day, or where my privilege was, I just walk down the street and you start at the right time for me, So it did blend people who maybe had different economic backgrounds, or nobody really. There were the dudes that were like rocker dudes, and they were really into their music and smoke cigarettes and fix cars, and there were, the girls who had like really the coolest clothes and knew how to dance and, all that kind of stuff. But everybody was always mixed together. It was almost like, didn't matter, that's just the kind of lifestyle that you have, but come sit here. So that was beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice experience.
Yeah.
I can't say my high school was perfect, but it was one high school for the whole city, so you could see like people just kind of talking to each other sometimes, but still a little bit of that clique forming.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you had your daughter literally right after high school.
Right after.
How do you remember a lot of that time?
Yeah, so I remember when I got pregnant, I felt like, again, if you recall, we were in church all the time. And so, actually, I didn't have a bad experience with church because I also had that same kind of vibrant youth community. Like, we grew up together at church. So, you know, we were in kindergarten together, we were adolescents and teenagers together, and the same kind of dynamic that I explained about the high school is kind of what it was at church, too. It wasn't like perfect folks. There were kids who were in gangs when we were teenagers, and they still went to church with me, you know. So so I had a good experience that way. But anyways, I was ashamed to the family because I got pregnant out of wedlock. So there's still that stuff to unpack, you know. So I guess I really didn't have any like sexual health background at all. Like, I didn't even know how bodies work, you know. And so I think that was an experience. That's probably why I did the education, sexual health education at Family Tree or at Planned Parenthood, because it was my way of like helping other young people like take control of their own decisions and their own bodies. And maybe you don't want to be a parent, or maybe, you know, you're also submerged in church and religious practices that maybe aren't working for you, and you know. So I remember that feeling like a failure, like I let my family down or whatever. But then immediately when my daughter was born, my mom's like everything, like she just melted. She loved her so much right away, and things changed. But you know, independent parenting is very hard. And her dad, he went to prison on the day I started college. So that's what I remember a lot too.
Oh, your daughter's the father.
Yeah.
Okay.
The father of my daughter, so that one up there.
Okay.
So her name is Ariel. And when Ariel was born, he was just like my best friend, and he just kept on for years chasing me. And then finally I'm like, okay, fine, let's give this a shot. And then lo and behold, again, I don't know how bodies work at that point, so I'm like, oh God, okay, I'm pregnant, you know. So that happened. Then he got into some trouble, and then I ended up getting a scholarship to go to the U. And so the day I went to the U, she was 6 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, something like that, very, very young. And then, well, she was born in June, so, and then I started school in September, so.
Okay, wow, so you didn't even take time off or anything, wow.
No, I didn't. And so I went straight to school. He went to prison for a year and a day, and so I'm navigating life just trying to figure this out, and I ended up dropping out after the second year, because Gap was such a small family feel, and then to get put into academia in a university and an institution like that, you just lost in the shuffle, and I just couldn't keep up, so I dropped out. But yeah, that was hard.
Yeah, did you ever go back to like a community school or find like a smaller college in Finland?
Yeah, I ended up going to, it's called St. Paul College now.
Oh yeah, that's like right over.
Yeah, by the cathedral, and yeah. What else? The history center's over there?
Yeah.
So I ended up going to St. Paul College. I waited a couple years after I dropped out, and then I just kind of struggled a lot financially and wanted to change those dynamics for my daughter. And so I went to school for a year, but they didn't have very many, so it was easier to do, it was closer, I could handle it better, the numbers, the sizes of the classes and stuff, but it was still, it was human resources, and it just was not what I was into. I was looking more for actually working with people, and you know, and not with a HR background, but in a different way. So I ended up dropping out again. But I joined some kind of program for single moms, and I ended up landing a job at the YWCA of St. Paul. And I was working with their transitional housing program. So they had 3 different sites in St. Paul, and it was moms and their kids, and they would teach like cooking or parenting classes, or how to do an interview, those types of skills. And so we did that. Then an opening came up for what they were launching was like a pilot program called the Family Intervention Program, where I worked with young people who had like IEPs, or had like probation officers, or maybe open child protection cases. And so I became the liaison between the family and the school, and then whatever entity that third thing was, probation officer or whatever. Did that for a while, and then I worked as a case manager for a transitional housing program in Maplewood, where it was on site. There was only 13 families that lived there, but they all had dual diagnoses, so it was like mental health and chemical addiction. And so I remember one of my people, she relapsed. She had her drug dealer at the house, and then he stabbed her. And then I had to try to figure out what to do with her 4 kids. So she's in the hospital healing, and I'm trying to call her family, who's all in Chicago. And so I'm trying to navigate, like, how to care for these kids until these people from Chicago come and this and that. Anyways, that's when I took a break from all, like, that type of work. So then what I did was a call center.
Okay.
I just really wanted nothing to do with matters of the heart.
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty common story for people who get started in that kind of work. Because it's very intense.
Yeah. And so I took that break, and that would happen a couple times in my life. So I took that break. I worked at a call center, and then got called back to the life. So now I'm 23, and I'm just had the twins. Those 2.
Okay.
They're 5 years apart, Ariel and the twins. Okay. And so now fast forward 5 years, and I'm at the part where I'm working at single room occupancy men's shelter downtown St. Paul, which was a gig that I really was excited to be back into. I got kind of hired because I could speak Spanish and help interpret with case managers. And so I worked there, and then I ended up getting other jobs through that route, working with houseless folks.
Yeah. Do you remember what called you back, or was it one thing or a lot of things? Or,
I think it was, as much as I enjoyed the break, I knew I wanted to feel like I was making a difference in my work, whatever I was doing. But it was really hard to navigate that because there was always this call to go back to school, not my own authentic call, but that the world was telling me that unless I have some kind of degree or letters after my name, I should accept that I'm going to be lower wealth, and that other people that are doing the same job as me, like, are entitled to better pay because they went to school. So I suffered from a lot of imposter syndrome too once I started getting these jobs, because at that time people didn't care. There was no word for like lived experience or no value to it for sure. It was just nope, degree.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of emphasis on the higher education. But I mean, yeah, it sounds like you were able to do that work anyway, but then everyone's still kind of telling you to go back to school.
Yeah. So it was like I felt lucky to be in these roles where, other folks were more like there was a factory that they worked at, and I did factory work before too, or they did cleaning, or they did whatever it was. And so for me, I just felt really honored to be able to work with people and feel like I was making a difference. And so at that time, I just took whatever they paid me because I felt like the balance was fine. And when I would try to like get promoted or take on more responsibility, and when I was given no after no, it was kind of just like I was shut down, and I accepted it because I didn't have a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a different world, and now it's so much better to know that more and more places really do see lived experience as valuable, and that, I mean, it's not perfect, right? Like, I'm looking for jobs now, and I'm just like, what do you pay, and what degree did you expect people to have, and what do you expect? You know, I mean, I see jobs that are like, you know, $16 or $18 an hour, but they want you to have like a bachelor's degree and be able to boom, 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 and have this many years of experience and speak another language. You're like, okay. Or you could go work at Amazon and, you know what I mean, not have to have those things. It's awful.
Yeah, wow. So this is all happening in your 20s?
Yeah, so I think I kind of mixed up the flow of the jobs, but in my 20s, I was 18 when I had Ariel, almost 18 when I had Ariel, then I was 23 when I had the twins, and I chose to actively, independently parent my kids on purpose, and so that meant that I didn't get any financial support or like physical support. But it was a good trade-off for me. So,
and that's like government financial support if you choose, or
no,
just
like child support. I didn't get any child support, but I did get government.
Because you, okay.
Yeah, because I was just like, no. So I'm now raising the 3 kids. It's challenging, but it was still okay, and I felt like, okay, so then it was after the twins were 8 weeks, I needed to go back to work. When I was pregnant with the twins, I remember I was on bed rest, but I just had to keep working because, again, like I said, I'm independently parenting. So I ended up working for like Travelers Express, which is a money order company. So in my life, I've had like breaks. Yeah. So I work for the money order company until I have the kids. I take 8 weeks off to heal, and then I'm back at work. But this time when I went back to work, it was, like I said, at the men's shelter. And so I worked there and then got connected to different places. But it's been my experience that every time I get to level up, we'll call it, it's always because another woman sees something in me and takes a chance on me, and then I get to that, like, kicks that door down. She'll like lift me up, and then I'll lift somebody else up, and it's just been, that's how my career has worked for me. So I mean, yeah, that kind of connection is really like deeply woven into me and my values.
So specifically like women, supporting women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been specific. In my story, anyways, it was always a woman. For example, I was working at Family Tree, and I wanted to be a sexual health educator. But it was so small at the time. There was 2 educators, and that was all there would ever be. So there was never going to be any time or any space unless one of them quit for me to become an educator. And so my boss at the time knew that Planned Parenthood was hiring a sexual health educator, and even though she didn't want me to leave, she did know that that was my dream. And so she's the one who connected me to them and, you know, did the referral and stuff for me. Then the woman there said that my interview was fine, but that they wanted to go with somebody who had degrees, and she was going to be my supervisor, so she fought for me. And so that's kind of like an example of how that cycle went. Or like, I remember I was at Wesco, and I was in the Black Indigenous Women of Color table, and there was another woman on the west side who worked at the mayor's office. And so she really wanted to work with me, but they also went with somebody who had a degree. That didn't work out, and so about 6 weeks later, she contacts me and says, hey, are you still available? I'm going to make this happen. And so even though I didn't have a degree and the role called for a degree, because she fought for me, I got to get in and work at the city. So it's just kind of been a trend in my life I'm really lucky to have.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. And are these all, I mean, I guess not necessarily local to the west side, but local to the Twin Cities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say there's like sort of a strong community drive in the Twin Cities?
Yeah, I think that, I think people really do want to see, like, lift each other. At least in my world, I'm really lucky to have that kind of, like, bubble around me, or, like, my orbit is like-minded folks. I don't have a lot of folks, at least at this point in my life, I don't have a lot of folks who are, values don't align, we'll say that. Mm-hmm. And now that we're talking about it, every one of these women were either queer or women of color, and so from marginalized communities, that's also something to point out too, that it's not just women, but women from marginalized communities that are trying to create space for me to be able to be there. And then, supporting me so that I could be successful there, too. That's that part 2 of it, Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. But yeah, I think it's really important that different communities support each other. Did you, experience a lot of marginalization? Obviously, like, the education piece,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but any other types, or...
So my very first memory ever, I was 4 years old, and my biological parents are, I want to tell you, like 10th and 11th grade, or 10th and 12th grade. They're in high school, early, very, very young. My mom is white, and her family is so racist that they disown her for getting pregnant with me. And then my dad, he's like, it's the 70s, and he's this beautiful dark brown, and he's got a big afro, and so they thought he was black, and the dad chased him around the table with a shotgun, threatening to kill him if he ever came back, for getting her pregnant. Not just getting her pregnant, but getting her pregnant with they called it color person seed. And then I think that's why my biological grandparents, my paternal grandparents, stepped in. They're just like, no, we're not doing this. But, so my very first memory, now, I told you about, she's white, he's brown, it's the 70s, so, yeah. They call themselves free-loving hippies, they told me. And so, my very first memory was on 52. I was in the car with them. I was about 4. And, well, I didn't know I was 4 until I talked to my mom and told her, my biological mom, and told her my memory. And she was like, how could you possibly remember that? You were 4. So, we're on 52. It's my dad driving. It's his friend who happens to be a white guy. He's sitting in the back with me. No seatbelts at that time. And my mom's sitting in the front. And there's a car behind us. We're on 52. At the time it was called Lafayette Bridge. And so I remember that we picked up this friend, and that somebody behind us was flashing their lights violently. And so my dad, the story goes that my dad thought maybe he had a flat tire or something was going on. So they pulled over to the side of the road, and it happened to be some guys who identified as skinheads, and they did not like that my dad was with her, and so they pulled him over, and then they pursued to jump him, not realizing that his best friend's in the back seat, or that there was a bat in the back seat. So my my mom comes and like pushes me down under the seat and covers me up, and they're fighting. My dad ends up getting like a broken nose, but apparently they were pretty good fighters. And so my very first memory was racism. But even when I was in utero, there was racism, right? Because, and then growing up, I had very little contact with my mom's family because they were, like I said, because they're hateful, racist. They were addicts. They were, bikers that were dangerous, just living dangerously, like getting drunk and high and riding around on motorcycles while you carry so much rage and hate is dangerous. So they would call me things like Beaner Baby and stuff like that. And so my time with her family was limited, but I always stayed in contact with my mom. Sometimes I even lived with her here and there.
Yeah, were your biological parents in your life a lot growing up?
So my dad's an addict, and he has been probably since maybe even before I was born, but I would say, like, there's pictures of me at jail in diapers, like talking to him for like a DWI or something. But my dad has struggled with addiction his whole life. My whole life, I should say, not his. My whole life. And so he was like in and out of jail and in and out of treatments. And, but he, and at one point when I was working at La Clinica, I remember he was at his lowest point where he was like houseless under the bridge. And so I would like let him come and take shower because there was like a staff shower space. And so I kind of sneak him in and let him take his showers. And he would hide his cart because he didn't want to embarrass me and stuff. And so he's battled a lot of addiction and had many kids. He says he doesn't know how many kids he had, And so, so he was in my life. And I think that it was in small doses. And I tell myself that was on purpose because his love for me was that he knew that the addiction could harm me. And so just staying away was his act of love, and then just coming and seeing me and come and go, here and there.
Yeah.
But that took a while to come to terms with.
Yeah. Is he still alive? Or?
Yeah, he's still alive. He's staying with his sister in South St. Paul and still battling addiction. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really tough thing to fight.
Yeah. And I think his like changed what he calls them demons, so like the demon of like at first it was alcoholism, then it was I don't know whatever drug, and then it was whatever drug it was with needles, and and so now I think it's meth. I don't know, but it's just so just saying that it keeps getting worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just love him through it now, but I wasn't always there like that. There was like rage and you should act this way and why did you give me away and what kind of dad does that, and no, I passed that.
Yeah. I'm glad you worked through that. Did you work through that by like talking to him or like?
I think sometimes I tried to talk to him, but again with the addiction and I think there was one time in my entire life that I kind of like laid it all out and said, this is what you did, this is the harm you caused, this is. I can't tell you that he retained any of it, but I didn't feel any better doing it. So since then, I've been, since then I have been working on it, and I've really come to a place where I just like love him from a distance, and I'm still like, I see him not regularly, but he'll swing by and we'll talk, and he'll just kind of share his regrets. Maybe that's why I am okay with it, because I just like, he is sorry and wish that he had a different life, but the addiction is really hard, that illness.
Well, yeah, and I imagine too, I don't know, like, getting chased around with a shotgun when you're young, like, he probably had a lot of experiences with racism, getting pulled over by skinheads.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's just a lot of problems all
Yeah.
intersecting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, when he went to the high school, he was an outsider because he came from Colorado. Remember I told you about the small town in Colorado. And so everybody here had grown up with each other, and so they go from, elementary school, preschool, elementary school, and high school together, and he's kind of inserted as an outsider or whatever, so maybe that was challenging for him. He definitely had lots of women his entire life, and thereby lots of kids too, but yeah, it would be a good question to ask him about his life growing up.
Yeah, no, well, I'm curious about your mom. She's raised in this family of skinheads, but she still ended up, were they...
They weren't skinheads. That was the first memory.
Oh, yes, that was the first memory.
Yeah, but they're racist.
They're just racist and bikers.
Yes, and addicts.
So.
Yes, and yeah. So what I know about her was they were really, really poor growing up, and there was 6 or 7 of them. The mom had epilepsy, and the dad kept robbing banks. He was a known St. Paul bank robber.
My goodness, almost like the old school.
I know.
It's that's crazy.
So that's what she tells me. And so he would rob a bank, then he would come home after being in jail, knock up her mom, and then go back to, work for a little bit, and then go back to jail for robbing a bank, but that it was like a setup because he would get out of jail, and even though, the mom gets pregnant again, he's trying to work, and then because he's trying to work, then the Section 8 would kick her off of Section 8 because now the guy's home, and he's making too much money, and so then he has to rob a bank because he's not making enough money. You kind of see the cycle, how it could happen.
Yeah.
So then he goes to jail again.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Yeah. So apparently this is this huge cycle. So she gets pregnant. They need more money. He starts working. They get kicked off of Section 8 and get homeless. And so now he has to rob a bank so they're not homeless. So then he goes to jail for robbing said bank. And then she can now get back on Section 8. And then now she needs a bigger place. And I'm sure there's long wait times and whatever. And the cycle continued. And I guess that's just kind of how it went. There was no way for them to... I guess she did small jobs on the side, like iron people's clothes or sew their clothes, things like that. But she had epilepsy, she was sick, she had a bunch of kids, she was very poor, and she was kept at a certain poverty level or she would lose housing and didn't have any, support because he's in jail. So that was interesting to find out.
Oh. Yeah, that's a really sort of sad cycle that I'm sure, they all knew it wasn't good, but it's kind of you get used to things.
Yeah.
Humans are big creatures of habit.
Mm-hmm. Can we pause for a second?
Oh, yeah. Good. Now that we've restocked our beverages, okay, remember, do you, so your mom had 7 other siblings, or how many siblings did she have?
My biological mom, I think, had 6. 6 other siblings. I think it was one passed away at as a toddler, and then there was 1 sister she has, and 4 brothers. So what's that? 6?
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, yes.
Yeah.
with the one that passed away.
Okay. And was she like the youngest or older? Or
Yeah, she was one of the youngest. So there's one younger than her of all of them. And she ended up really trying to pull herself out of poverty, and she took some time away from her family for a while. Later she went back, and never really like had a really strong relationship with her mom or anything. But I think she was the most like successful because she wasn't a big partier, she wasn't a big drinker. I mean, I guess she had her times, I don't know, but she was one of the more successful ones in the family. She ended up being like, she owned a home, and that was a big deal because everybody else was like renting, and she never did have any more people of color as partners though. So I don't know if that, that's something I should ask her too.
Yeah, so you're still in contact with her too?
Yeah, it's been a rough road with her. It's on and off, but now she's kind of sick. And so I help give her showers. She can't really give herself showers, so I go do that. I'm her only child. And she lived a life where she really isolated herself from, like as an adult, isolated herself a lot from friends and the outside world. Like her favorite thing to do was either be with whoever she was with, her partner, or just go home after work and like shut the door on the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, your biological parents, they did date or...
In high school, yeah.
In high school.
And it sounds like they were each other's first love. And it sounds like they tried back and forth for a long time, but he was in and out of jail. She's trying to go to school. And they both graduated high school. Both went on to try to get different degrees. I think they dropped out of college too. But I think it was just really hard because he had lots of women. That was his favorite thing. And then the addiction. And she was trying to like get her life together so she could possibly parent me again. But it wasn't working. And so I think it was on and off. But to this day, I think they both still like have mad love for each other. They just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, a lot of issues of poverty getting in the way. And I guess, I'm curious how, like, with her family being, like, so kind of racist, like, outwardly, like, was she just, like, more of a rebel, or she just, like, met your bio
my
dad?
dad's pretty good looking.
he's just a charmer.
Yes. No, so I don't know if she dabbled and then got pregnant and didn't like plan for that to happen. Well, obviously she didn't plan to be a teen mom. But I never saw her. She had a few relationships. They were all long relationships, but they were all white men. So I don't know if she was a rebel or if my dad really was just like suave and debonair and like, good looking and could knock your socks off. I don't know.
Yeah. So, because it sounds like you mostly experienced the racism from like her family members, not her herself. Really.
Yeah, I don't think from her herself. Although I do remember I said I kind of went back and forth sometimes in my life, very short stints, and usually it was me rebelling as a teenager because my grandma was so strict that I wanted to make out with boys, and I'll never be able to do that if I live with my grandma. So I move in with my mom.
Yes, the teenage thought process.
Yes. And so I specifically remember my friend from high school and I making out with these two boys from a different school. We go to Gap, they go to Humboldt. They're football players, and it was like the biggest act of rebellion ever. But we're sitting outside my biological mom's house in this pickup truck, and just to be super like stereotypical, we're also listening to Mexican music, It was like the American Me soundtrack or something at the time. But anyways, so I remember my mom had a white boyfriend, and he came out and like yelled at the boys and kicked him out of there. And then I heard him tell my mom, like, these freaking spics, you got to keep them away from your daughter. And my mom didn't say anything. You know, she didn't say, Katrina is Mexican. Don't say that. She didn't really say anything.
Yeah, and I imagine, yeah, it's tough because that's the kind of thing, like, no matter what she was thinking, it's kind of like that sticks with you.
Yeah. And so, but those feel like one-offs. I was like always very grateful that she made the decision to let my grandparents raise me, because I learned my culture, I learned my language, I was submerged into like this community tithing alignment of values, church friends that I made, and then just like my life took a whole different way than I think it would have had I been raised with her and her family. You know, I have memories of going to Mexico, and I have memories of my quinceañera and things like that I don't know that my biological mom ever really identifies that I'm not just white. I think maybe that's a pain point for her.
Interesting.
Because maybe I'm the reason that she wasn't able to be close to her family for a while.
Yeah, it's really just a lot of complications.
Yeah. And it took a lot to get to a point where I just have like deep gratitude about it, and I would like always tell her, because she would carry guilt about it and say like, I'm so sorry that I gave you away, and I'm just like, why? I was so fortunate, like, and it wasn't like you never got to stay in touch with me or anything like that. You know, she was at my quinceañera as a guest, she just wasn't throwing it or part of it, you know, and she was here and there with lots of hiccups in between on the time I think her dad's home. Oh, you're gonna put some bass in there again, huh?
Big scary guard dog.
No, it is her dad. Okay. Do you want to pause it?
Yeah, I can pause it.
Because then he'll probably come in and say hi and...
There we go. Yeah. So, well, yeah. I mean, that's a really good summary of how how your relationship with your biological parents has developed over time. And so they were both of their families are from the West Side too.
So they went to a school that, you know where Heritage is in West St. Paul? It's like a middle school. Well, it used to be called Grass High School, and that's where they went to school. So when my biological grandparents came to Minnesota, they had a stop at McDonough. It was public housing projects on the east side. My grandma refused to unpack. It was a month or two, and she was just like, absolutely not. I am not living here, whatever. So then they rented a house on Robert Street, which is across the street from Dairy Queen. It has since then turned into a parking lot. So it's like kitty corner from Dairy Queen. There's a parking lot by like maybe it's a tax place or eyelashes place. I don't know.
Dairy Queen? Is that like right by the Walgreens?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like Walgreens and Little Caesars, and then there's a building, like a house, but it's a business, and then there's a parking lot.
Okay.
Where the parking lot is where my grandparents and my dad and, you know, his siblings were raised. Mm-hmm. So in West St. Paul, first place that they rented over here. And so they went to school, and I think my biological mom lived on the east side, but went to this school. And then my dad lived on Robert Street and went to this school. And then when I was 1, I was 1 year old when they finally closed on the house and we got to move in. So I guess, yeah, it's been on the west side.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my biological mom pretty much lived all her life that I know of on the east side and surrounding areas.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was a lot of like east side, Arcade, Phelan area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So, then your biological dad is west side.
He's west side, yes. Mm-hmm.
East side, west side, love.
Yes, yes. The forbidden. Mm-hmm.
That's fun. So yeah, cool. Wow, very interesting. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to say, like, regarding your mom having your your grandparents raise you, that was probably hard for her to choose, so, especially with a lot of pressure for women to be the child raiser. But it sounds like you've had like a good experience with kind of a little more non-traditional family and still had a lot of support. So.
Yeah, I think that it probably haunted her more than it should because I had a good life. I had a good upbringing. What she had hoped for me, I got. She said the reason that she let go and let them raise me was because she wanted me to have family ties and strong family network that I wouldn't get if I lived with her. That I'd learn the language and I wouldn't get that if I lived with her. And that maybe I'd have access to leave the state, go on a vacation, that she wasn't going to be able to provide for me. And so I think it was twofold for her. There was one pain of releasing and letting somebody else raise me without any responsibility on her. She didn't have to pay child support or anything like that. She could see me whenever she wanted to, that type of thing. And then I think there was also so it must have been hard to let go of that. And then she completely submerged herself into a single life and didn't take advantage of, at some point stopped wanting to see me and stuff like that. So maybe it was painful and she needed to close that book completely. Mm-hmm. And then we rekindled it as adults and she was close to her first granddaughter, but then not for a while, and then close to the twins, but then not for a while, and so it's kind of wonky. That's why I said lots of hiccups along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, no, well, cool. We sort of took a tangent there, but I would like to go back to sort of your professional life and how you're talking about that women, specifically marginalized women, queer, BIPOC, were a huge help in your career, and yeah. So, do you want to just talk more? Because I know you have just had a lot of different jobs in a lot of different fields. You've been doing that for a really long time, so I'd just be curious to hear more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, it was always people-centered work that was really the most life-giving for me. Usually it's jobs that take a lot of intentionality around self-care, which I was not good at because my identity was mom. And so even if I got the time away from work and I wasn't wearing a work hat, well, that didn't mean that I could put on a self-care. It meant now it's mom time, and so, and then it would be now it's daughter time, now, so I think that contributed to a lot of kind of doing jobs for, 2 to 3 years and then shifting to a whole different dynamic, but still people-centered. Yeah, and so I think at first when it started, it was transitional housing programs, it was the shelters, it was the case management for people who had been, have the mental health and addiction but are coming out of shelter, and so they're living there on site. And so then he closed that chapter, and in between there's those like call center jobs, where I'm like, whew, I need a break. And so then what happened after I left, okay, so then I went to sexual health, I think as a way to, as I alluded to earlier, as a way to kind of correct what I felt was an injustice that happened to me. Like, my mom was amazing in so many ways, and yet I felt duped by not having any sexual health. Like, even when I got my first period, she did not want to talk to me about it, and she like cut up a sheet, made a square, and like safety pinned it to my underwear and told me to call my sister. Now, as an adult, I know that, she didn't have her own mom. She sought those types of things out. Maybe she had no experience in whatever. But to her, like, you only have sex to procreate. That's it. And so we never got to really talk about that kind of stuff. So I went into sexual health, I think, as a way to, like, heal that part of me. And to really just be like, no, I want to teach young people that you don't have to be a parent if you don't want to be, and that's totally okay. Or how bodies work. And we talked about pleasure, like something that would be totally unheard of, and just really wanted to bring some love and awareness to the LGBTQI two-spirit community, especially in the Latino community where I was doing the sexual health education. Specifically, the sexual health education I did in middle school and high school was with Latino kids, and it was a cohort for like 12 weeks. It was about 15 to 20 kids every time, and I really fell in love with the facilitation of it, with the being connected with folks, so with the being on the journey with them and watching like the discovery and transformation happen, their aha moments and stuff, and just see them building connections with each other. So that was with the cohorts. And I would host mother-daughter retreats for prepubescent kids, daughters and their mothers, in, like, it was Spanish and English, but there was a lot of like talking about what it was like for the mom growing up, so that the daughter could kind of see her as a human, and not just this authoritative figure. Talk about what to expect with the period, plan that out, share these different emotional experiences, and again, all part of trying to heal what I didn't get with my mom. And so after I closed the chapter on sexual health. So it was like Family Tree Clinic, then it was Planned Parenthood, then I came over here to La Clinica and I became a supervisor of education and outreach programs. And so again, with the facilitation was awesome, being connected to community was awesome, loved it. And then there was a lot of internal stuff happening. So that's around the time that I started working with Wesco, that I got introduced to Wesco, was 2017. So I get introduced to them, and the work that they're doing, and I enter in as a community leader. And then I got Westsider of the Year in 2018 for the community work that we had been doing. And I just really loved it. And so building that community power together and creating like fighting systems together, and so then I was on the board, and then I got hired there, and so organizing, so somewhere in there, so I went from healthcare, so it was the houseless population in all those different ways, and then it was healthcare, sexual health specifically, and I'm now dabbling in facilitation and finding that that's my niche. I love it. And so then fast forward to 2019, it's Mother's Day, and I had the car accident. Did I ever tell you the story about the car accident?
I don't think I have heard.
Okay. So in 2019, it's Mother's Day, and in Blaine, they do these huge, like, neighborhood garage sales. And there's, like, pop-up food trucks and, like, a DJ, and it's, like, a big deal. So we go there in the daytime, my boyfriend and now husband and I, and there was a fish tank that I wanted, and the lady said, you know, you guys should come back. It's Sunday. Come back at nighttime. Everybody puts whatever didn't sell on the curb, and you should just come back because I bet it'll still be here. I'm like, oh, okay. So I ended up going back, just kind of out of curiosity. I did see the fish tank, didn't want it anymore, but we're pulled over to the side. Now, in Blaine, because it's a suburb, the streets are very different. It's like you park and drive and drive and park. So wide. I've never seen anything like it except for in our neighborhood, except for on Hall. You know how wide Hall is? Yes. So
Yeah, the road. I actually lived in Blaine for like 2 months once. So
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
A long time ago. Not that long ago. I think it was 2015. But yeah, it's 51, right? That huge road that is just like wide, and it's like 55 miles. And, yeah, you just go up and down, and all the businesses are there.
Yeah, and so this was in residential, and in this residential area where this stuff is happening, me and my boyfriend pulled the car over, and it's like dusk, but we're parked in front of a house where we should be parked, and we're looking for an Allen wrench in the trunk. Okay, so we're both in the trunk, and I see a car coming from way far away. It's residential, so what is it, 25, 30 miles an hour, something like that, okay. And I'm like, there's a car coming. You know what, just forget it. Let's get out of here. And so before I could do that, the last thing I heard was my boyfriend tell me they're going to hit us. And so the car we're parked on this side, and then there's this street, and then this street coming like this. He swerves and hits my parked car. Yeah. And so my husband he's my boyfriend at that time. He gets thrown across the street, and he said it was something like you see in the movies when there's like a bomb that goes off and there's like a loud ringing and this disorientation that happens. And so he gets up, and he thinks his leg might be broken, his hip hurts, but he's trying to find me, and he's looking to see where I got thrown. And the cars are crashed together. And so he comes up to our car, calling for me, yelling out for me, and he looks down, and he just sees my legs. And so the car had landed on top of me. So this scar here is from the tire being on my face. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's so
Were you
crazy.
conscious?
No, I died in that accident. So yeah, and so he's just like, oh my God, he's thinking that I'm going to, like be cut in half. You know, he doesn't know, and so by now crowds are starting to form from the neighbors. They heard the crash, they seen it, they're calling the ambulance, and then my husband says. He said he told people in the crowd to get the old school jacks, to get the car off of me. The car's on my head. It could pop my head at any point, because now he's been able to look down and see. He says he's holding my hand, and he hears like the deep wheezing because I had a collapsed lung. But he saw that I was intact, but the car was on my head. And so these two strangers go into their homes, grab some jacks, and they come and help jack the car up. And he's like, wait, because I don't know if that's what's keeping her alive. I need the pressure off her head, but I don't know what, like the bar on her chest, I don't know what's going on, so go very slow. So they finally get the car pumped up enough, and then I just go lifeless. And so he said, I felt when your life left your body, and he was holding my hand. I remember seeing my mom, my grandma. She was wearing this like gold shirt she used to wear, like this button-up yellow gold shirt. She was beautiful, and I just kept saying, "Ma, Ma," and I remember how peaceful and like it's just so wild. Like I kind of knew what was happening, and if my mom would just accept me, then I could pass away, and I felt like I would be okay. But in the vision or whatever was happening after I died, she wouldn't look at me. And I'm like, Ma, Ma, and she won't look at me. And then I come back. And so now Ed's like, oh my God, she's back, because he heard the screaming and the gurgling and the breathing again. And so then this, the ambulance comes and puts us in 2 different things or whatever. But they did tell him that my head would have popped like a watermelon if he didn't get that car off of me. Yeah, so then I'm in the hospital. I'm in a coma for 3 days. Up until then, I had never broken a bone. Nothing. I sprained my ankle, but I never broke a bone. Now I got broken ribs and collapsed lung, and I have, like, the car on my head, and my, like, face is hanging. And, broken leg, and I don't know, anything else you can think of. I had a car on me. And so, why did I start telling you this story about the car accident? I don't know what the question was, but yeah, that was one of those hard, challenging things that I went through.
Yeah, I'm sure that was crazy.
Oh, that's where my break happened. Remember, I was talking about being an organizer. Okay, so that's where the break happened.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so in 2019, Family Trees, I had the car accident. I left La Clinica because I wanted to be an organizer. So I went over to the Alliance. The Alliance didn't end up working out for me. And so I ended up quitting. And then 2 weeks later, I got in this car accident. And then the car accident, I had to learn how to walk again. I was like, as you can imagine, so much recovery. So I was put in a nursing home so that they could take care of me for a while. And I had to learn how to walk with a walker, and then just all kinds of things, different surgeries that had to happen after I left there and stuff. And then I didn't qualify for, like, county assistance, so we had no money. My husband was just bounced off the ground too, and had a traumatic brain injury and was suffering from PTSD from watching me die and watching my face come off ultimately. And so he suffered from that. And so because the county goes back 3 months, 3 months ago when I worked at the Alliance, I didn't qualify, so we had no money. So I went back to work on the hotline at Family Tree, part-time, just whatever I could do. And, they were amazing for me, constant source of support for me. And then that job at the mayor's office happened for me, where the person who was in the bywalk table paved the way for me to be able to enter in. And so then I worked at the mayor's office on their College Bound initiative, and we did that. I did that for a couple of years, from 2019 to 22, because I was there 3 years, but it was also during the pandemic.
What was your title? Do you remember?
I was the community engagement specialist. Yeah. And that's where I met Joshua, because Joshua was in Vista at the mayor's office.
And do you just want to say quickly who Joshua is?
Oh, Joshua is, I forget because you're very comfortable to talk to. So Joshua is one of the housing justice organizers at Wesco, was one of the housing justice organizers at Wesco that really rallied folks to try to launch the West Side Tenant Union before it existed. Yeah, and now he does policy work in a whole different place.
Yeah, and so you met there, and did you bring him to Wesco, or what happened?
Yeah, so I stayed there. He went on to work in two different places, and then when the opportunity for a housing justice organizer happened, that's when I still didn't want to leave the mayor's office, and so I was helping Wesco do hiring, but I didn't want the role as the supervisor. I wanted to stay at the mayor's office. But they...
Yeah. And were you a board member at Wesco at the time? Or
I think I had stepped down from the board.
Okay. But you're just like a very... You're a super volunteer kind of.
Yeah, it was like after I was done with my term on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was just kind of helping support. There was Genevieve and Monica, who were the ED and the comms person. We're doing interviews, and I just kind of jumped in to help. And so that was one of the... Joshua, I didn't get to be on his interview because I knew him, so it's a conflict. But I did get to connect him to the work. Mm-hmm. And then later got talked into leaving the mayor's office and going there to also, work there. So that's how that happened, that Joshua and I knew each other from a previous life when I was at the mayor's office.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, when did you get introduced to the idea of like community organizing? As like, I mean, it seems like you were kind of doing it your whole life,
Mm-hmm.
but like, when did you sort of get that terminology and idea?
Yeah, I think that one of my gifts, like I believe that we're all like pre-downloaded with a certain gift or a couple gifts, and I think one of mine has been like connection. And so the pattern in my life has kind of been like, like a walking resource person initially, and then later it became more of like, who might I know to connect them with to help live out their best version of themselves or their best life, So I do think that you're correct in that. I think that in my life there's been this thread of community organizing without it actually being called that. Mm-hmm. And I think the way that the world looks at organizing wouldn't have happened until I started going to Wesco in 2017. And so as a favor to somebody did a favor for me, and so then my return favor was to attend a community meeting, and then that's how I entered in and just started saying like, this is an amazing space, and there's so many people missing. So how do we make that connection happen? So I thought that I'd be able to be instrumental in helping like make Wesco reflect the community a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're from 5 generations of West Siders, so
Mm-hmm.
good to have your voice.
Yeah, and I think that also in there, I knew that facilitation was my jam. Like I just really liked hosting the space for the discovery to happen, but not teaching necessarily was in it. It was the hosting. Mm-hmm. So I started a job during the pandemic at Beautiful Laundrette, and so
cool.
Beautiful Laundrette started in 2019. So right around the time I'm getting healing from my car accident, they are just getting going. And I noticed, I can't remember even where I found out, but Libraries Without Borders is hiring a community navigator to be on this small project with the Beautiful Laundrette, because they had done this thing called Wash and Learn Initiative, or WALI, in major cities like, in Puerto Rico, but major cities here, like Seattle, Austin, Texas, and New York City, all these, different places. And so what they discovered was people are already washing talk about going to where people are. So bringing resources to where people are at the laundromats. And so when she heard about it, she being the owner, Laurel, of Beautiful Laundrette, she really wanted to make it a community space, and that was a clear, crisp idea that these two could go hand in hand. So she does interviews for Libraries Without Borders, is going to pay for it, and provide this money for whoever's going to do this role. And so we did. We launched it together, and the pandemic happened, and then we just pivoted, and we started having like pop-up clinics for COVID testing, or like maybe you were losing your housing, and so we connected with programs who would provide housing support, rental support, or whatever during the pandemic. Later it turned into vaccinations if you wanted, or trainings around how to talk to people about COVID, or all kinds of different stuff. Then it changed into books, like free books, and having the bookmobile from the library come and give kids some summer programming so that they can continue to like stay engaged over the summer when they were kind of losing they're forgetting what they learned over the summer. What else? The legal clinic was launched during that time, so supports for community members who need, as long as it's not criminal, if it's civil stuff like family law or immigration law, that type of stuff, supports happened. And so we just launched this amazing space together where, you know, she was the owner of the space and really wanted to create it for the community to have a place where they felt like welcomed and supported, but also hosted community things there. And then I was the connector with the community. And so since then we did the, I didn't do Festival of Rights one year. I think you did the Festival of Rights. I did the Festival of Rights the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the year before that, I think. Anyways, that all came out of Wash and Learn Initiative, Libraries Without Borders, me being hired as the community navigator, and then us holding that relationship together. Once I entered into Wesco, then I could help like get the word out better because we had comms and a bigger following, and yeah. And then during that time, I also joined the Shannon. So the Shannon Institute, Leadership Institute. Are you familiar?
I'm not sure. You should. Yeah. What is it?
So the Shannon Leadership Institute has been around for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. And ultimately, it is a 9-month cohort where professionals mid-career get to go like on a renewal journey, because they need to find out if it still works for them, this path that they're on, and what happens when it no longer serves you and you like bleed out, if you're burned out and you bleed out onto your staff, or things like that. So we do things, we host and facilitate workshops every month around like identities and worldviews, balance and burnout, joy and presence, navigating and change and transition. And so folks are coming together. They're usually like, sometimes they're police officers and firefighters and CEOs and directors. That's usually who it is. And people find like it has a history of people changing their lives in terms of like the activist and the police officer who hated each other before now built this connection and understand each other in a different way. Or people leave their loveless marriage because it was just like not working for them anymore, but they just never addressed it. Or people leave their whole career and decide, I've done this enough, I want to open that bookstore I've always wanted to open as a kid, and I just went a different path. And so discovery and renewal happens during that. And so I've been teaching the Shannon. I was part of the Shannon as a alum, and now I'm teaching it. This is my 3rd year.
Oh, okay. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So you've done a lot.
Lots and lots of, connecting work. And I mean, and there's other things too, but it's like retreats for women, strategic planning for the Institute of Sexual and Gender Health. Just different random things on top of like neighborhoods now. Getting to get invited and come be a small part of the journey there is cool too.
Yeah, no, it was great seeing you yesterday.
Good.
Yeah, wow. Well, I feel like we could talk about that forever, but I do want to, and you talked a bit about how, like, you know, your biological parents' families were renters, your parents rented, like, all this stuff. So, yeah, I'm curious how you see renting and how that's, like, impacted your life. What's your relationship to renting? Yeah,
so I think that there's such thing as, like, residue of poverty. And so I think that the best way to explain it really is that there was a time in my life where I was single mom with 3 kids, so that's one income for 4 people. And I got faced sometimes with the decision of keeping the electricity on and paying the rent late, or, you know, not having food versus paying the cell phone bill, whatever. And so that really took a ding to my rental history and to my, because even if I got to stay at my rentals, my apartment would still give me a UD for non-payment, but I'd still get to stay because I did pay it. I just didn't pay it by the 5th. And so those dings to your rental are awful. And then, so you fast forward to this place where I'm at now. I've always had bad experiences with apartments and with landlords. I wouldn't say I ever had a good experience with a landlord until I got here. However, my landlord now is amazing. But prior to this, myself and my 2 daughters were trying to get a place for 7 months. We stretched off of the west side even and thought, okay, we'll go to Maplewood, we'll go to Woodbury, wherever. And we kept on hitting what I called the residue of poverty. I had people write letters for me, character letters. I wrote letters myself saying, I know that my credit isn't great, but I make this much money. And that was at a time when I had 1 income, 3 people. Now I got 3 incomes, you know, because my daughters are grown and, you know, like, just give me a chance. I could pay double deposit, you know, and so kind of pleading and begging for some pretty awful places. I remember there's a place in West St. Paul where the guy straight up said, people with bad credit have a lot of domestic violence issues. I'm not saying you do, but I'm just saying that's why I can't let you live here. And it was a crappy apartment. Like, the basement was flooded and there was fans going, smelled like mold, that type of, you know. And then...
Yeah, I know the types.
Yeah. There's another guy on Smith that wanted us to let him come and look at our houses. My daughters and I, all 3 lived in different places, and so he wanted us to let him come to look at our places we live now to make sure that we're clean enough for him before we could apply. And so, I mean, I have story upon story of this ridiculousness, and 7 months of consistently looking. It was awful. And then it wasn't until, again, connections. So there's a person called Ellie who was the health and environmental justice organizer, and she was running all the work in the community garden of Good Hearts right there, that my landlord happened to own. So my landlord then said, I've had my tenants for 10 years, they're leaving, and I really don't want to, like, screen people and go through that whole process. But I would trust Wesco and you, Ellie, if you know somebody that you would, ultimately, like, not on paper, but co-sign, that would be amazing. I would love to get a referral from you because I would trust that. And so she told me about it. It's during COVID. We came and checked out the place, and I just was blown away. Love the landlord. He's been so amazing. He's very kind. He lets us have agency in how we want the place to look. He isn't raising he hates raising the rent even $50 a year, and I think he only did that the last 2 years. And he's very apologetic about it. Like, I don't really want to do this, but at some point you're going to move out. And then, and he's just been so, so good to us. Like, lets us put anything we want to in the yard and make it feel like our own. Isn't one that just constantly shows up and makes you feel uncomfortable. Always works with us with anything to do with rent. It just comes once or twice a year to do inspections just to make sure we're safe, that things are working, functioning properly. The community garden is his land also, and so anything to do with that, we kind of, he just wants to make sure that we're okay with that because that's his land, but Wesco and the community is using it. And so, yeah, I've had an amazing experience with him. But you have to also know that I moved 12 times. And in the past, since my mom died, so in the past 10 years, probably another 5. So about 17 times in my life, I have lived in rentals. And this is the first time I can tell you a good story about a landlord. That's wild.
Yeah, it shouldn't take that long.
No.
And I'm curious, does he live around here or like in the neighborhood or in the Twin Cities?
His family is connected to prominent families on the west side, but he lives in Inver Grove.
Okay, well,
and this is the only place that he has, and the only reason he did it was like his dad owned a place and rented it, and so he did it as like and his dad apparently was a really amazing landlord too, like a way to shift the game and shift the narrative and say it can be done and like be kind to people and like help them have dignified housing and trust them to take care of your home and that type of thing. And so then he did that here, and so we're only his second renters. The first people stayed the 10 years, and now we've been here 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, wow. So, yeah, that usually I've found.
That's bad. She's been naughty. You should put her on punishment.
Oh, you're gonna go on punishment.
But yeah, okay, so you're saying like this is probably your 17th rental, first time like felt treated with like dignity and respect. And yeah, do you just want to explain the experience of when you came here the first time?
Yeah, to this place that I'm at?
Yeah.
So when I came here, so he is married to a family that is like friends and connected to my family, but we didn't know each other because it was too far removed. And when we got into the place, the energy of the place was, it was perfect. It was like bright and airy, and it wasn't dingy like that last one I was telling you about. There was no problems. There was no, like I said, the one where with the domestic violence where he's like making this accusation and this assumption about me based on a credit number. And then having the damage that wasn't that. There was no problems. It was looking beautiful. We could feel ourselves here. We could see being here for a while. It just finally felt like the hunt was over and that we found the home and the home found us. And that was and then to be treated with dignity and respect. And like I didn't get that with the other place I told you about on Smith, where the guy's like, let me see your house before I can let you even apply. That's
wild. A crazy, like, violation of privacy. Like, what?
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just like, and then you look at someone with a 760 credit score or whatever they can be, and, like, and they're just like, oh, okay, yeah. It's like, yeah, that's really frustrating. Well, because, yeah, it sounds too, I mean, you've been saying you've had bad rental experiences while renting, but it's like, for you, it's a lot of times it's starting even before you've even found the place, just trying to find the place. Yeah. You're hitting all of these barriers.
Yeah, and I mean, it just takes its toll on you, too. Again, going back to that, like, what it tells you about yourself when you have to ask people to write character letters about you. What it feels like when you have to, like, plead your case and explain why there's the residue of poverty. I'm not in that place anymore. I haven't been there for a while. I'm making more money, but it doesn't matter to you because I still have this number that is, like, burned on my forehead. Then that's what you're judging me by. And so, yeah, it does take its toll on your spirit. It makes you feel, like, hopeless. It makes you feel like, almost like you deserve to live in the flooded basement and just take whatever these landlords are going to throw your way, because otherwise you don't get housing. The third final one I'll share with you was right above the smoke shop. And there's 3...
Is that the smoke shop on Stryker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
And there's like a 3-bedroom apartment up there. And so I don't want to live there. However, it is a 3-bedroom, and I think it was $1,300, or it seemed super affordable, and we're running out of options. We're just getting more and more depressed. So we go and check it out, and a kid, I would say a kid, it's not a kid, they're maybe 21, show up in their, like, drop top Mercedes pulling in. They're late because they're coming from, like, Edina or Eden Prairie or something like that. And so it's like his parents own it, and he's just coming really annoyed. So you come up the stairs, and it smells like weed, and there's, like, all this brokenness up and down the hallways, damage to the walls and stuff. And then the unit that he shows us is not cleaned. There's a bunch of, like, trash and food in the middle of the floor. The cabinets in the kitchen are hanging. There's a punched door, like a hole in the door, the bathroom door that's punched. There's, like, booze and chicken nuggets, and, like, somebody was sweeping but got called off in a hurry or something. And he was just saying, okay, do you want it or not? Pretty much, he didn't say this, but pretty much it was like, if you don't want it, I'm still going to find somebody to rent it. So I don't even care that that's not, that this looks like this, and I'm showing it to you.
It's just a way for him to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was no, like, embarrassed look on his face. It was just like, yeah, this is what you get,
Yeah.
I think he did say the cabinets will get fixed, and they'll fix that door.
Like, just not even the bare minimum, like less than the bare minimum.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, I just think that that's what kind of launched my drive to help people get dignified living. Like, safe and affordable, super important. But so is, like, feeling pride in where you live and feeling, connected to your neighbors, or even seen by the person who's renting it to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, it's like, if your landlord isn't even in state, like, what are you gonna do? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, too, so that's a lot of, like, that's, like, you're not even renting yet, but when you were renting, like, what kinds of experiences did you have with landlords before you got to this place?
Yeah, so I think I told you about the landlords when I was looking for a place. So then when I actually was living in a place, I remember I couldn't find anything in my neighborhood. So Again, I had to look outside my neighborhood for a short amount of time. I lived in West St. Paul behind Menards because it was still close to my community, but you get priced out over here really quick. And folks don't want to move because, folks, it's a really great community. So people don't want to move, and then the new buildings that are coming they're priced out of your range,
Yeah, kind of. I've seen them not on George Street, but on like the street right by the High Bridge, like they're overlooking the river and stuff. Very nice view.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some apartments. I'm like, probably couldn't afford that.
Yeah. And so you get pushed out of your neighborhood. And so I ended up living in West St. Paul for a short amount of time. I don't think I even finished that lease out. But it was just things like if a neighbor complains about noise, they don't investigate it. They just give you a warning. And so it's like he said, she said, but there's no investigation, no talking to you, just a note under your door. So, there was times that I absolutely 100% know there was no noise. You're making that up, And so that type of thing. Or things like the amenities just don't work. So you're paying to have this heated underground parking and the garage door opener's a problem. Or there's a pool and a sauna, but they're never open because they're always, fixing it or working on it. So things like that.
It's just like something to show on the tour.
Yes. Or, it was just thing after thing like that. In this particular one, it was like constantly you needed to move your car, and they were constantly towing people's cars. And it was just kind of the way that everybody was so disposable to them, so when I would try to say something like, hey, so you towed my neighbor's car, and what that means to them is that now they're going to miss work, and they could lose their job, and then they could lose their housing, trying to come up with all this money to get it out of the towing. Like the impound lot is going to cost a lot of money and take more time off of work. And so like, how can we make a better process? And it was just like, yeah, right. We're not making a better process. Move your freaking car, but it's just like, what if there was the person is gone in a different state taking care of their sick parent? Like, there's just no care for humans at all. It's just like so disposable.
Yeah. Ugh.
Those are my experiences.
Yeah, do you have any, like, particular story that really stands out, or moment where you felt really, like, dismissed or disrespected?
Yeah, I think those more recent ones I already told you about. It was the assumption about you. There was another guy in Woodbury with a townhouse that we, again, didn't move into, but his reason was because my daughters are older, and what if they leave me and I can't afford it by myself? And I'm just like, but we're in a lease, and so we would have to pay no matter what. And he's like, well, I just don't want that kind of problem. Your daughters are in their 20s, they'll be married soon, and they're gonna leave you. And I'm just like, okay.
Just telling you how your life is gonna be.
Yeah, and it was just insane, the things that we ended up going through, and on the hunt. And then the living experiences. Well, I had the brain injury, so it's hard for me to remember all the stuff. But I do remember just a series of, like, looking for rentals. It's always cheaper on the east side, and so that's why lots of folks would have to go over there, and just wishing, like, why do we have to leave our beloved community that we grew up in, or like me, had many generations in, because we get priced out. And then everybody that I know has, like, went across the border to the east side because it's cheaper, or to West St. Paul because there's more availability, a little bit more affordable, and close enough, So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really frustrating that people get priced out of like their community. Like it's yeah. Well, I think that transitions well into kind of where I want to sort of wrap things up. But I just want to, like, with all these experiences you've had, what does, like, because you've, like, done stuff with the West Side Tenant Union, and, like, what do you think needs to happen for, like, tenants to have dignified living and, change to happen?
I think that the landlords, my landlord is a role model for that it can be done. You know, that I think that there's this like assumption that that landlords can't possibly function in this way. We're just so used to doing it. You know, like even the name landlord, you know, is like problematic. And so a homeowner and like renter or tenant, you know, feels a little bit more dignified even with that. So I think there has to be a way that we're bringing landlords and tenants into some listening sessions so that they can talk about how it can be done well. And I think that would weed out the bad landlords, right? But in my experience, so I know my landlord's stepson also wanted to buy, and so he's a landlord now. He has a couple of units and they're all on the west side. And he, because he saw his stepdad with us here and the previous tenants, knows how to do it and really isn't trying to make it be like a huge money maker, but more of, I mean, it's not a huge money maker. They try to keep the rent affordable, and they also function in the same way. It's just like this other landlord and my landlord, who are family members, have talked about like creating dignified living for folks and not raising the rent and giving them the, you know, making the home look nice, give them opportunity to like be proud of where they live. And so if people like them too, if I get to know two good landlords, then they exist. And if we could get people like them to help co-facilitate those conversations where they could say, because I don't know the ins and outs of anything about home owning, so I don't know, but if they can do it, other people can do it too. And I think we just have to have that expectation that it's the exception. I mean, it's the rule, not the exception. We need to like turn it on its head, and there should be some kind of penalty for landlords, like I was gonna say cautious, but landlords that are taking advantage of folks when they're breaking the law, when they're when they're behaving, landlords behaving badly. Like there should be a penalty for that, and then there should be like a cap on how much they can own if you're going to continue to be like an awful landlord. You shouldn't be able to monopolize the community. Now you own every place, and all of us just have to deal with how you treat us.
Yeah, I know that's kind of happened in some areas, like with Millennium, I think it is the one I hear about a lot. Buying a lot of like single-family rentals, that sort of thing. Yeah, I guess so. How do you think that? Like, how do you think we get those penalties like implemented and passed?
I think we have to get buy-in from. There's like, I'm gonna try to get this together in my head. We are recently so accustomed to separation from one another after, like, during the pandemic, it really made us isolate a lot, and I think it also made us, like, there was the vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated, and if you weren't vaccinated, what that meant about you was that you're selfish, and if you were vaccinated, well, you're crazy because you're going to turn into a zombie, and, like, so that. Then there was the uprising after George Floyd was killed, and so that pit us against each other, too. And then there was, you know, it's just been one thing after the Trump administration. So then there's, the MAGA folks and the non-MAGA folks. And then it just keeps on happening. And so I think what we need to do to really see this happen is get together and get buy-in from both sides. So it's not landlord versus tenant, but it's a more like the world we want to live in together. I know that there are a handful of West Side landlords, the two that I just named, or that I know, but also like in our orbit, who like are landlords and really want to be like do good landlords and hate what that what the stereotype of a landlord is, But if we could get folks like that to bring in other landlords, and then if we could get tenants to also hold themselves accountable to like how we care for our property or how we abide by the leases, If folks could, from both sides, could come together instead of being seen as others, that's them, that's not us, then I think that we'd come together really powerfully and we'd be able to bring about like some policy change. And I think that would just like change our neighborhood completely. If you had landlords, we were gonna have like a grading system, like the Better Business Bureau or Angie's List, where it's like these are recommended landlords. Like, wouldn't you want to be on that list? But also, we have such a scarcity mindset, and so who benefits from that? And so being able to like bridge those two communities together, the renters and the landlords, and make sure that everybody's getting what they want. So it's not like we won, like I get to be an awful landlord, I won, or we get to be terrible tenants, we won. But instead, like, this is what we're trying to build for like us now, and then our kids as they're growing up and they're becoming renters, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Yeah, well, we've been talking for a while. Mm-hmm. So I just like to ask, do you have any life advice for people or any last words you'd like to close out with?
No, I think just join a tenant union meeting at least. If there's an opportunity to like kind of just learn like how power is built, even if you just do it in your own building. It doesn't have to be a whole neighborhood tenant union. It could just be that you're building one person learning how to do that is amazing. And so when you can, if your kids are seeing you fight for what you feel is right, similar to like how my grandma did, now you're seeing it generation later, a different twist to it. That's what I would say, is just like learn how to build power in your own building. The kids are watching and they're going to apply that to their life. And imagine if you knew how to organize as a young person, your life would be totally different. If you're like, oh, I'm going to be wealthy in relationship with folks and build power together with folks, it would just change your life.
Yeah, no, well that's great. I think that's a perfect place to end it. So I will
All right.
stop the recording.